It was 7:18 a.m. when Ray unlocked the service entrance at Calder and Finch headquarters. The hallways were still dark, echoing only with the soft buzz of emergency lights. The building wouldn't fully wake up for another hour. Ray liked it that way. He pushed his cart forward, mop bucket sloshing slightly as he moved down the marble corridor. He always started on the executive floor, cleaning the spaces that made decisions without ever seeing who wiped their tables. He wore the same gray coveralls every day, a stitched patch with his name just above the heart. They used to be loose on him when he started here 10 years ago. Now they fit snugly. Age and time had filled out the spaces work hadn't already worn down. At the corner of the boardroom, he paused. The glass wall reflected him faintly, framed by polished oak and leather chairs that would soon be filled with voices louder than his ever needed to be. Ray exhaled and rolled up his sleeves. No one saw him there, not yet. That was part of the plan. By 8:03 a.m., the elevators chimed. Ray had already finished the boardroom and was wiping down the wall-mounted coffee machine across from the reception desk when he heard the first heels hit the tile. A woman in a tailored blazer and sharp bob rounded the corner. She glanced at Ray, her eyes skimming past him like a coat rack. "Excuse me," she said, not slowing. "Someone spilled coffee in the West Conference room yesterday. Can you make sure that's handled before the execs get here?" Ray nodded. "Already done." She blinked, surprised he responded. Then she turned back to her phone, tapping furiously. 10 minutes later, a young man in a slim blue suit arrived, earbuds still in, coffee in hand. He saw Ray adjusting the chairs in the main waiting area and grinned. "You guys always fixing stuff up, huh?" he said, tossing his half-empty cup into the trash without breaking stride. It missed. Coffee splashed along the floor. Ray watched it slide under a bench, then turned back to his work. "Hey," the guy called from over his shoulder, "you missed a spot." Ray didn't respond. Not yet. The morning rush was beginning. The noise was building. But Ray, as always, moved silently. Today, they thought they saw the janitor. They didn't know who'd be sitting at the head of the table in an hour. The boardroom began to fill by 8:45 a.m. Polished shoes clicked against the floor. Laptops opened, screens lit up. A few of the executives exchanged greetings, tight smiles, clipped nods, the kind reserved for mornings they weren't entirely sure what was coming. Linda from HR, always early, sat near the middle of the long table. She glanced toward the head seat and whispered to the man beside her, "He's not here yet?" "Nope," he said, not looking up. "First day. Guess he's making an entrance." Someone chuckled. "Hope he's not like the last one. That guy never left his office." Ray had finished the hallway outside and leaned lightly against his cart. Through the glass, he could see them all. One man near the front scrolled through a deck on his tablet and looked up, spotting Ray briefly. Their eyes met. It wasn't recognition, more confusion. Like he was trying to place a face he was sure he'd never seen in that suit of clothes before. The man turned to the colleague beside him and muttered something. She glanced toward Ray and nodded without expression. Ray checked his watch. 8:59. Time to move. He reached into the cart, pulled off his gloves, and folded them neatly on top of the cleaning supplies. Then he turned toward the boardroom door. Ray opened the boardroom door just as the wall clock ticked to 9 o'clock. Conversations halted. He didn't speak, just walked the length of the table, past the stairs, past the subtle double takes, until he reached the head seat. The one left conspicuously empty. He pulled it out, sat down, and placed a slim black folder in front of him. Silence stretched. A few exchanged glances, unsure whether to intervene. The woman with the bob from earlier raised a hand halfway, then let it fall back to her lap. The man who'd spilled the coffee leaned forward. Sorry, that seat's reserved." Ray didn't look at him. He just opened the folder. Inside was a printed memo. From the board of directors. Effective immediately. Interim CEO, Raymond Ellis. Ray looked up, finally, and scanned the room. "I believe we were scheduled to start at 9. A pause. Someone shifted in their seat. No one spoke. Ray's voice was calm, quiet. "I've reviewed your Q2 projections. We'll start there. Then we'll talk about culture." Stillness. Then a single chair creaked as someone sat straighter, slowly realizing what had just happened. Ray wasn't the janitor in the room anymore. He never had been. No one reached for their laptops right away. A few glanced down at their notes, others looked toward the woman in HR as if waiting for a cue on how to proceed. Linda blinked, adjusted her glasses, then slowly opened her folder. Ray waited. He didn't tap a pen or clear his throat. He just let the weight of the moment settle. "I want to be clear about something," he said finally. "This isn't about theatrics. I've been working here for 12 years. Most of you didn't notice." A few brows furrowed. The young man who made the coffee remark earlier shifted in his seat. "You've walked past me in the halls. I fixed the broken lock on the analytics office last December. Replaced the lobby bulbs myself when they ordered the wrong kind. And every time I saw how decisions were made. Who was listened to? Who wasn't? A woman near the end of the table, a VP in charge of operations, spoke up, cautious. "Mr. Ellis, may I ask why now? Why this approach?" Ray nodded slightly. "Because nothing reveals truth like anonymity. And before I accepted this role, I needed to understand what this place really was." No one had anything to say to that. He leaned back, eyes moving from face to face. Not cold, not cruel. Just watching. Some dropped their gaze. Some didn't. Ray knew which ones would matter. "Let's talk about the floor teams," Ray said. That drew a few surprised looks. "I've sat in on all 5 department stand-ups this week. No one knew who I was." He paused, then added, "That was intentional." The man from marketing, the one who always seemed amused by everything, leaned forward, a polite smile on his face. "I'm sure they were enlightening." Ray didn't match the smile. "They were," he said. A junior analyst pitched an idea during Monday's meeting. No one acknowledged it. 10 minutes later, the same idea was repeated by a manager, and suddenly it was brilliant. Someone coughed. The woman from HR scribbled something in her notes. Another team had 3 back-to-back departures. Exit interviews all flagged the same issue: leadership ignoring feedback, inconsistent credit for work, and burnout. But somehow that manager still holds their position. Ray's eyes rested briefly on one of the executives at the far end of the table. The man stiffened but didn't respond. Ray continued, his voice even. "I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here to rebuild." He folded his hands. "So I have one question to start." Everyone looked up. "What kind of company do you actually think this is?" The room stayed silent. Not because they didn't know the answer, but because they knew he already did. The silence lingered too long. Finally, Linda from HR cleared her throat. "We like to think we're inclusive, responsive, fast-moving." Ray tilted his head slightly. "But," she hesitated, "we don't always live up to it." Someone else spoke up, operations VP this time. "There's a disconnect between leadership and execution. We talk values, but the day-to-day doesn't reflect them." Ray nodded slowly. "That's honest." The young man who'd spilled his coffee earlier fidgeted. "I didn't realize you were watching us all this time." "I wasn't," Ray said. "I was listening." That quieted him. Ray stood, walked to the whiteboard, and picked up a marker. "From today forward, I want every director and VP spending 1 day each month working from the floor they oversee. Not in a meeting. On the floor. Side by side with the people doing the work." Several looked startled. One woman's pen paused in mid-note. Ray continued, "If that sounds beneath you, you shouldn't be in the role." No one argued. He turned back to them. "Change starts when people see you standing beside them, not just above them." It wasn't a warning. It was an invitation. But not everyone was ready to accept it. That afternoon, the building hummed as usual, but a subtle change ran beneath the rhythm. Word had spread. The janitor was the CEO. Some whispered. Others double-checked their emails looking for a formal announcement. But Ray hadn't sent one. Not yet. In the cafeteria, a product manager paused when she saw Ray standing in line, tray in hand. No suit, no badge, no assistant trailing behind. Just the same calm expression. "You're really," she began, unsure how to finish. Ray gave a slight nod. "Yeah." She smiled, a little embarrassed. "I think I asked you where the extra forks were last week." "You did," he said, without a hint of judgment. "Drawer by the microwave." She nodded, awkward, then stepped aside to let him pass. Elsewhere on the 5th floor, 2 junior staffers passed a printed agenda back and forth. The subject line read, "Leadership Culture Reset, effective immediately." "Do you think it's real?" one whispered. "I think it already is," the other replied. Meanwhile, in a corner office overlooking the city, one VP stared out the window, arms crossed. He didn't speak during the meeting, didn't ask any questions, but he was the one who laughed loudest at the coffee joke that morning. Now he said nothing. The view didn't look quite the same. At 4:15 p.m., Ray called for a one-on-one. It wasn't formal. No calendar invite. Just a quiet message sent through Linda. "Tell Darren Foster I'd like a few minutes." Darren, the VP of strategy, was the same one who'd laughed that morning. The same one who hadn't said a word once Ray took the head seat. He arrived promptly. Too promptly. Ray was seated in a small glass-walled meeting room, arms resting loosely on the table, a legal pad in front of him. Darren stepped in, shut the door, and offered a tight smile. "Bit of a surprise today," he said. Ray didn't return the smile. For some, Darren stayed standing. "Look, I didn't mean anything by earlier. It was just morning talk." Ray nodded. "I know. That's the problem." Darren's smile faltered. He sat slowly. "Are we good?" Ray paused, then leaned forward. "Depends. How do you lead when no one's watching?" Darren blinked. Ray continued, voice low. "I've seen you present flawlessly in boardrooms. You speak in clean metrics and polished slides. But earlier, you saw a man in coveralls and laughed like it was your cue." Darren looked away, jaw tight. Ray didn't press harder. He just waited, then added, "This isn't about who you are in a meeting. It's who you are in the in-between moments." He stood. "You don't need to answer now, but think hard, because everyone's watching now. And not just me." Darren didn't move. The door clicked softly as Ray left. By Thursday morning, something had changed. In the open-plan workspace on the 4th floor, a manager brought coffee for her team before their daily stand-up. She'd never done that before. One of the junior developers noticed, eyes narrowing slightly in surprise, but said nothing. On the 3rd floor, Darren Foster walked the aisle slowly, stopping at a desk he usually passed without a glance. "You mentioned a proposal last week," he said to a young analyst. "I'd like to hear more." The analyst blinked. "Seriously?" Darren nodded once. "You've got 15 minutes? It wasn't an apology, but it was something. Upstairs, Ray sat in his new office. The nameplate still hadn't been changed. He hadn't asked for it. He was reviewing the feedback Linda compiled, anonymous insights from staff, submitted since his appointment. Some praised the change. Others were cautious, skeptical, but most carried a theme. Maybe now things would be different. Ray leaned back in his chair. Outside the glass, people moved past, some slowing when they caught a glimpse of him. A few smiled. One nodded. They didn't see a janitor anymore. They saw something else. Not just a CEO. A mirror. That afternoon, Ray walked the building without the cart for the first time in years. Still in his usual clothes, clean, pressed, but simple. He moved slowly, not as an observer anymore, but not entirely as a figurehead either. A designer in the branding department spotted him near the stairwell. She stiffened at first, as if unsure whether to speak. Then, cautiously, she offered a small hello. Ray nodded. "How's your week going?" She smiled, a little surprised. "Honestly, better than most." He kept walking, didn't linger, just enough of a presence to say, "I'm here. I see you." Later, on the 2nd floor, he passed a small group of interns. One whispered something, and another glanced up nervously, then looked away. Ray stopped, turned back. "You're the new cohort, right?" The tallest nodded. "Yeah, just started Monday." Ray looked each of them in the eye. "Good. Don't let anyone here tell you your ideas don't matter." They didn't know what to say. One of them muttered, "Thanks." Ray gave a faint smile. "You'll be surprised how far quiet people can go." And then he left. Behind him, the hallway felt different, like something important had just passed through. In the break room, conversations had shifted. It wasn't just the tone, quieter, less performative, it was the topics. People were asking questions they hadn't before. Not just about policies or deadlines, but about each other. At one table, a junior admin asked her team lead, "Do you think we ever really listened to the night crew?" The lead paused, then said honestly, "I don't think we even knew their names." Ray sat at a nearby table alone, eating a sandwich he'd packed from home. He wasn't there to be part of the moment, but he didn't have to be. The ripple had already begun. A facilities technician walked in and froze for a second when she saw him. Her name tag read, Alina. He looked up. "Hey!" She nodded, awkward. "Didn't expect to see you in here." "I used to eat in that corner," Ray said, pointing gently. "No one ever joined me." Alina's face shifted. "I always thought you didn't want to talk." Ray smiled faintly. "I just figured no one wanted to hear." Alina sat down 2 seats away. After a moment, she asked, "You think things'll actually change?" Ray didn't answer right away. He took a sip of water. Then, "They already are." At 3 p.m., Ray called a staff-wide meeting. No suits, no agenda, just a circle of chairs set up in the large open space outside the boardroom. No stage, no podium, just eye-level conversation. He waited until most were seated, some skeptical, some simply curious, then spoke without notes. "This isn't about restructuring," he began. "It's about rethinking." The room was still. "For too long, titles have decided whose voice matters. We're going to flip that. From now on, feedback isn't filtered through hierarchy. It's direct. Cross-team sessions start next week. Rotating groups. Every level. Every voice." Someone raised a hand, hesitant. "What if people don't speak up?" Ray looked at them, steady. "Then we wait. We make space until they do." Another voice spoke from the back. "And what if leadership doesn't listen?" Ray didn't hesitate. "Then they won't be leadership for long." That answer echoed louder than the room itself. Heads turned. I shifted. He wasn't offering a strategy. He was drawing a line. Ray glanced around. No more closed doors. If you've got something to say, say it. If you've been ignored, I'm listening. No one applauded, but they didn't look away either. Respect had never come from position, and now they were seeing what it looked like in practice. Friday evening, the building was quiet again. Most had already left. The lights on the executive floor were dimmed. Desks were cleared, monitors asleep. But near the elevators, Ray stood alone, looking down at the lobby from the mezzanine window. Below, the night crew had just arrived. 2 custodians pushed their carts toward the east wing. One of them glanced up, spotted him watching, and gave a small wave. Ray waved back. He stayed there for a moment, then walked toward the service stairwell, the one he used for years. It still smelled faintly of old paint and disinfectant. He descended slowly, past floors he used to clean without notice. In the lobby, Alina waited by the doors. "Didn't think you'd take the back way again." "Old habits," Ray said. She studied him. Most people would have changed. Ray looked at the revolving doors. "I did. Just not the way they expected." She nodded. "People talk different now. The way they look at us, it's not the same." Ray didn't smile, but something softened in his eyes. "Let's hope it stays that way." He pushed open the glass doors and stepped into the cool air. No press, no fanfare, just a man walking out the same way he always walked in. Except this time everyone knew his name, and they'd remember more than just the title he left behind. They'd remember how he made them look twice, then look inward, and change, real change, had already begun.